Hey friends. So, I've been integrating some of what showed up for me yesterday, and which, if you didn't see my post, it was I had basically I am receiving the insight and the recognition that allowing myself to receive is something that I could afford to consciously practice. And even when I think I'm doing it, it's helpful for me, at least at this point, to have a really regular practice of checking in with where I'm really at. This is something that I'm noticing. This showed up in, if you saw my post from yesterday, it showed up in some feedback that I received. But it has also showed up in a number of other areas of my life. And as with any pattern or any complex of patterns, any set of patterns, our behavior there's a lot of autopilots running to make that plane fly. There's a lot of computer software humming along. And so making significant changes to that is always a little more involved than we might think. Until we become so conscious, so hyper aware of our energy, of our mind, of our body, of really just all the different dimensions of our consciousness. When I witness real masters, I sometimes see in them a capacity not that they don't run patterns, not that they're not running software, but that there's a level of choice as to what kind of software they're running, and I think that's maybe the kind of the ticket, or that's the way to look at it, is we don't get to choose whether or not the human organism, the human body, mind, runs software or not, runs automated patterns or not. We are going to run automated patterns, that we have to. There's no other way to really live. Living would be continuously overwhelming and so exhausting that we could never survive if we didn't have the capacity to automate our thought and behavior. But because that's the case, our organism and our mind have gotten so good at automating things that it becomes difficult to unautomate things, or even to change the automation from one pattern to another. And that's where things kind of get real, right? That's what I would call the essence of spiritual practice, making everything we do conscious. Conscious doesn't mean that it's not automated. If I play a Beethoven sonata consciously, I didn't play that sonata without programming a vast amount of information and action into a kind of neurological memory. that's imprinted and that happens automatically. But I can still execute that pattern consciously. So anyway, this is something that I feel like I've probably given you this spiel before. If you've watched my post for any length of time, you've probably heard me say this before. But it kind of shows up as relevant, and it kind of, I think I have enthusiasm to simply articulate that to myself on occasions when I'm particularly confronted with certain patterns or certain moments of recognition where I go, oh, I see. Yes, noted, duly noted. I see what I'm doing, or I see what I'm not doing, and my own automated behavior kind of becomes evident. The lack of choice within my automated behavior becomes evident to me, and that's never a flattering moment. It's never really that fun to see, because there's a level, on the surface level, it's not fun to see, because on the surface level, something that I have programmed doing is getting frustrated. It's getting stopped. Of course, on a deeper level, if I can keep my center of gravity located at a relatively high level of perspective, I can go, oh my God, thank you. I'm being freed from a prison, from handcuffs that I didn't even know I was wearing. Right? That is the ongoing revelation, the ongoing experience of successful, effective spiritual practice, is a feeling of liberation from a prison, from a series of prisons or a series of shackles that we don't even know we're wearing and that we don't even know are restricting us until the moment where we become free of them. And sometimes there's a moment where we see them and we realize they're restricting us before we let them go, before we actually that we dissolve them and they're no longer restricting us. But very often, in my experience, that's almost the same moment. The moment of recognition and the moment of release are very close together, because if we're truly, because as soon as consciousness enters the equation, we've got a choice. We can choose, and this, I guess this does happen, you can be addicted to something. Like, you can smoke cigarettes and become conscious of how addicted you are to cigarettes and still choose to keep smoking cigarettes. That's not just possible, that's common. But I think, in the context of spiritual work, of deep inner work, seeing these patterns presupposes a willingness to become conscious. You can't make much progress in spiritual work without being willing to see how you're not free, right? How to show me how I'm unfree is like the question we get up every morning and ask, because we sense that we're not free. We sense that there's more to life, that there's energy, there's joy, there's light, there's love, there's inspiration, there's health, there's pleasure, there's not just positive emotions, there's all a vast gamut of depth and scope and breadth and other terms that apply to dimensions of feeling. That are there. We sense them. We know reality is vast. We know the universe is a giant playground. So we kind of show up ready to have, wanting more of that and ready to give up the lesser for the greater. But we still have to sometimes clear some hurdles along the way. Every once in a while, that lesser feels attractive. Like, every once in a while, that extra hour of sleep in the morning instead of meditating or doing yoga, something just feels right about it. I can't put my finger on it. So it's an ongoing journey, I think is what I'm saying. And as I am in this, clearly now I've received a wave of insight, and it's very relevant to this post, and it's very relevant to all the work that I do, because receiving and the permission to allowing ourselves to be where we are, to be who we are, to be what we are. That's really the energy that is showing up as relevant to me. I mean, I don't know if energy is the right word, but that's the direction in which I'm receiving a nudge. Because if I observe that I have trouble doing that for other people, I can be absolutely assured that I also have trouble doing it for myself. And maybe I'm pretty good at doing it for other people and myself, but there's further to go. There's another level. And I'm, even as that frustration arises, even as that resistance arises, or that I want to use the tools I usually use, I just want to do what I know how to do, impulse arises. Oh, so grateful to be invited into another level. So that's where this morning brings me. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.